Morning and welcome to today's math lesson, which is called Add Decimals. So go ahead and take out your math notebook, open to the next available page, and write this title at the top, Add Decimals. So what is a decimal? It's any number that has a decimal point in it, and we all know what adding is. So let's say we had these two decimals, 54 hundredths plus 7 8/10. These are both decimal numbers because they have decimal points, and we're adding them together. That's what today's lesson is about, adding decimals. Now, how do you add decimals? You follow these three simple steps, okay? Step one is line up the decimal points. So how would we do that here? We take this decimal point, put it right here. Take this decimal point, put it right here. That is very important. You have to line up the decimal points. Line up the decimal points. Step two, line up all the place value positions. So that means we put the 0, since it's in the ones place, we put it right here. The 5 is in the tenths place. The 4 is in the hundredths place. The 7 goes right here because it's in the ones place. The 8 goes in the tenths place. Now notice there's an empty place value right here. So we can just put a 0 right there because we can add zeros to the right of a decimal point and it doesn't change the value. Okay? And step 3 is add normally. And that's it. So now we just have to make sure that we're adding all the digits to the digit that's in the corresponding place value position in the other number. So this 4 needs to be added to this 0 because they're both in the hundredths place. And 4 plus 0 is 4. This 8 needs to be added to this 5 because they're both in the tenths place. 8 plus 5 is 13. We put the 3 here, carry the 1. This 7, this 0, and this 1 need to be added up because they're all in the ones place. And 7 plus 0 plus 1 is 8. And then, oh, you know what? There's actually 4 steps. Step 4 is drop the decimal point. So the decimal point just drops down in the sum exactly where it is in both addends. There's like a little trap door here, and it just opens up, and the decimal point falls down right there. So the answer is 8 34 hundredths. Now, you notice how I lined these two numbers up following these steps. I did not line them up like this. If I did that, I would end up with a very, very wrong answer. And the reason this would be wrong is because I'd be adding the 8 in the tenths place to the 4 in the hundredths place. I'd be adding the 7 in the ones place to the 5 in the tenths place. And the 0 would just be added to nothing. But I would not get the correct answer. Why? Because my decimal points aren't lined up. Okay, so this is not the right way to do it. This is the right way to do it. Let's follow these 4 steps with another problem. Let's say we had 14 8/10 plus 10 26 hundredths. Okay. Step 1, line up the decimal point. So we take this decimal point, we'll put it right here. Take this decimal point, we'll put it right here, lined up with the other one. Okay, right on top of each other. Then line up all the place value positions. So 14, and basically I just build the numbers around the decimal points. If I just build the numbers around the decimal points, I'll naturally line up all the place value positions. And then 10 26 hundredths. And notice there's nothing here to add the 6 to, but I can add a 0 there because 14 80 hundredths is the same value as 14 8/10. Because remember, you can add zeros to the right of a decimal number and it doesn't change the value. Step 3 is add normally. 0 plus 6 is 6. 8 plus 2 is 10. Carry the 1. 1 plus 4 is 5. And 1 plus 1 is 2. And then step 3 is drop the decimal point It just falls down into the sum exactly lined up with where it is in both addends. Let's do another example. And we're still following these 4 steps. Let's do, sometimes you add a non-decimal number to a decimal number. But remember, every number in the world really does have a decimal point. It's just when there's no digits to the right of it, the decimal point becomes invisible. But the decimal point is always to the right of the ones place. So even though this doesn't have a decimal point, it really does. It's right here. The 5 is in the ones place, so the decimal point is directly to the right of it. So we can still line up the decimal points in this number. Now we line up the place value positions. The 5 is in the ones place, directly to the left of the decimal point. The 2 is in the tens place, directly to the left of that. Now the 8 is in the ones place, under the 5, and the 4 is in the tenths place. The 6 is in the hundredths place. There's no digits to add these two, but we can add zeros to the right of a decimal number, and it doesn't change the value. And so 25 and 0 hundredths is the same thing as just 25, because 0 hundredths is the same thing as no hundredths. And then 8 and 46 hundredths is the second number. Now we add normally. 0 plus 6 is 6. 0 plus 4 is 4. 5 plus 8 is 13, carry the 1, and 1 plus 2 is 3. Okay, and then the decimal point drops down in the sum, lined up with where it is in both addends. Let's do another example. You can't see the steps anymore, these up here, but hopefully you wrote them down in your own math notebook. Hopefully you're taking notes and writing down everything with me as I'm writing it down. So hopefully you have this written down in your math notebook. So even though I'm scrolling down on the page, you can still see it written down in your own math notebook. Let's say we had 35 and 8 hundredths plus 11 and 9 tenths. Okay, step 1, line up the decimal points. Step 2, line up all the place value positions, and we'll naturally do that if we just build the numbers around the decimal points. We'll naturally put the 1 under the 5 because they're both in the ones place. We'll naturally put this 1 under the 3 because they're both in the tens place. And we'll naturally put this 9 under the 0 because they're both in the tenths place. And then we can add a 0 to the right of 9 to line up with the 8 in the hundredths place. It doesn't change the value. Now we add them together. 8 plus 0 is 8. 9 plus 0 is 9. 5 plus 1 is 6. 3 plus 1 is 4. And then the decimal point drops down into the sum, lined up exactly in a line with where it is in both addends. Let's do one more example since we have a little bit more room on the page. Let's do 8 tenths plus 22 hundredths. Step 1, line up the decimal points. Step 2, line up all the place value positions, which we'll naturally do if we just build the numbers around the decimal points. And there's no hundredths place in 8 tenths, but we can add a 0. 80 hundredths is the same value as 8 tenths. Now we add normally. 0 plus 2 is 2. 8 plus 2 is 10. Carry the 1. 1 plus 0 is 1. And then we drop down the decimal point, lined up in the sum with where it is in both addends. So the answer is 1 and 2 hundredths. Okay, so those are, I just did quite a few examples with you. Now I'm going to give you your independent work, which I have to do on the next side because I've taken up that whole page. So here's your independent work. I'd like you to add 9 and 14 hundredths plus 2 and 5 hundredths. Okay, that's the first one. And then I'd also like you to add 6 and 57 hundredths plus, that's a 57, sorry for my handwriting, plus 1 and 2 tenths. So that's 6 and 57 hundredths plus 1 and 2 tenths. And then the first problem is 9 and 14 hundredths plus 2 and 5 hundredths. Go ahead and do those now for your independent work, and then click on the next video attached below this one to see if you did it right. And I will catch you next time.